everybody. Welcome to Calvary.
Glad you could join us this morning. I hope you enjoyed the service.
Good morning and welcome to Calvary. We're so glad to have you here.
Hi all, welcome to Calvary. Hope you enjoyed the service. Missing you all, Calvarians. Hope to see you soon. Hope you're all keeping well, safe, and happy.
Good morning and welcome to Calvary. I'm glad you're able to join us this morning from wherever you're coming from this morning. We've got an exciting morning planned, and we've got several things that are going on, from kids' time to worship to a special interview with our brand new worship intern, Katie Turgeon, and of course, teaching. So thank you for joining us, and if you are new here, please go to our website and fill out a contact card. We'd love to get to know you and answer any questions that you may have. Enjoy.
Jesus, you will weep. Jesus, you will reign forevermore. The victory is yours. You reign forevermore. The victory is yours. King Jesus reigns forevermore. The victory is yours. Weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. And my God will never fail. My God will never fail. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Power in the mighty name of Jesus. In every war he wages, he will win. I'm not backing down from any giant. I know how this story ends. And I know how this story ends. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. And you turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. And you turn it for good. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. light.
Morning. It's good to see you guys again. Today we're going to be in 2 Samuel for potentially the last time, at least for these times we have together over video. Throughout the last number of weeks, it's been far too long, we've been going through David's life and how he went from just a little shepherd boy looking after his sheep to now being the king of all of Israel. And we've seen him go through some really high points, some really awesome points, and some really low points, some really difficult times. And the thing is, and the reason why we're going to be in 2 Samuel 7 is because all of this ends with David finally living in a castle. He's in the castle, he's in a palace. He's finally overcome all of his enemies and he can rest. And yet, he still doesn't feel fully satisfied because God, the Ark of the Covenant we talked about last week, is in a tent. And he wants God to have a place just like he does. And so he wants to build a temple. But God tells David that he wasn't going to be the one to do it. It would be his son. His children would build that temple and that his kingdom would last forever. And what ends up happening, actually, is as time goes on and as the Bible continues, we find out about something really important that comes later, who we all know the name of, I'm sure, and that's Jesus. And Jesus was actually, if you trace it all back, was a descendant of David. He was one of the people that came from David and his children. And we all know Jesus has done amazing things, and he saves us from the things that we struggle with. And now the reason why I want to share this with you is because we've seen how David had all those hard things, he had all those difficult things, and how he had those good things as well, but how he trusted God during those times, and how it ended up leading to Jesus and all the great things he did for us. And I want to encourage each and every one of you guys during this time. We're all having a rough time. Some of us more of a rough time than others. But God is with us too. And if we trust him, if we depend on him, and if we seek him during this time, he will bring great things out of our lives as well. So each day that you're going about, whether it's great or whether it's not so great, trust God is there with you, because he was with David through everything, and he'll be with you through everything.
And that is how you make a perfect turkey dinner. Wow. So, it's all these different skills will be very helpful future in life.
Yep, definitely.
Good morning and welcome. You've caught us again in the middle of an interview and a conversation, and as usual, we have got a special treat for you because today we get to introduce to you, well, for some of you, it'll be somebody new, and for some of you, it'll be an old face. And that, old face, I'm not sure that's the way I should have introed it, but we've got Katie Turgeon here, and Katie is our new music intern for this summer. And so I thought it would be great for us to have her on, and we can hear a bit about who she is and some of the things that she's going to be doing over the summer, even while we're at a distance, and how she's coming alongside us at Calvary and helping us out. So Katie, welcome.
Hi. Good
Now,
to be here.
It is good. And we go back like a ways.
Yeah, we do.
To when you were just a youngin' in youth group, and I was just a youth pastor, not just a youth pastor, but I was the youth pastor here. And you're from Balgony, or as not my new favorite term, just my favorite term, you're a Balganesian.
Yes.
And so we've been on missions trips together, and we've seen each other at camp, and now you get to come to Calvary. Yeah. But I know I know about you, and we've worked together before, but I thought it'd be good for you to share a bit of maybe your story, what you're doing right now in life, where you've come from, where you're going, just normal stuff that fits into a 4-minute segment on a show.
Totally. My name's Katie. I'm from Balgony. I was born there. And I became a Christian when I was a young teen, I guess. I really understood what it meant. And that was mostly from camp. I went to Dallas Valley for a couple of years and then befriended the Tyke Robs, if you guys know that family from Balgony. And they kind of took me under their wing, and I became friends with one of their daughters, and she took me to youth group. And then, I met you through youth group mission trips and gave my life to Christ, definitely at camp. And then I sort of I definitely learned how to serve the Lord through camp. And so I've been working at Good Spirit Bible Camp for, last summer was my 5th summer working there.
You're like the longest serving person at Good Spirit. I think you've got like the most seniority, even more than the director.
Not more than Luke.
Although he wouldn't want me to say it, but
I don't know about that. But it's been a good run.
Yeah, and it was great because I actually remember, I can't remember how many years ago it was, though, like I preached here on a Sunday morning, and then I got to drive up to Good Spirit and baptize you in the lake. And so that's one of my favorite memories of you. And now you are at Briarcrest, right? Mm-hmm. And so what are you doing there?
I just finished my 4th year of biblical studies. I'm going to do it in 5 years, my degree. So hopefully returning in the fall if everything is okay. But I did a year at the U of R, and then I transferred to Briarcrest. I was only going to do a year of the biblical studies certificate, but then I really loved studying the Bible and learning about ancient languages and all that fun stuff. So I stuck around, and I'd love to pursue a career in ministry or maybe go into more of the nonprofit sector, like with social work. I really don't know what, but something to do with serving the Lord in that way.
No, that's great. And you'll notice how I had this great smile come over my face as she shared that she loves biblical languages. And this is what I think is great too, is because, I mean, you're doing Greek, right? Did you do Hebrew?
We're offering it in the fall, but I need to graduate, so I can't take another language.
Fair enough. Yeah. So you've done Greek and you're doing biblical studies, but you're here at Calvary for music, which is like just a whole nother area, really almost outside of the school. But you're very involved at Briarcrest in music. You're very involved at Good Spirit with music. So you led music there, and at Briarcrest you've had some kind of cool opportunities to do stuff there.
I've been serving on college worship teams. So every morning we have chapel, and then your team serves once a week, every other week kind of thing. And this past year I got to serve on the worship team at Youthquake. So that was a lot of fun. Definitely one of the coolest experiences. But
it is. I mean, I guess it's going to be the question of, Youthquake, you're in front of 2,000, 3,000 people on a Sunday, and here you're in front of 200, 300 million people on the internet who are regularly tuning in. Like, are you going to be able to adjust all right to just the sheer amount of growth of traffic that's going to be coming in?
I'll try.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I don't know.
we've really tried to not let it all go to our heads here. So. Or I guess probably the better way to describe it is everyone has just slowly watched us descend into madness. But regardless, so Katie is going to be here. She's going to be doing music every Sunday. You're going to see her next week. And so we thought it'd be great for us to introduce her. And she's going to be doing this through the summer and helping us out and just using the gifts that God has given her. Maybe we'll have her teaching some Greek classes too. Who knows?
I don't know about that.
No. All right. Well, Katie, thank you for joining us, and thank you for just joining us at Calvary. And I'm excited for what's going to happen starting next week and as we go through the summer together.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Good morning again, and I am glad you are able to join us. If you are new here, we've been going through a series called I'm Broken or I'm Okay. And again, as you see that graphic, I really believe that how you look at this series or how you say this series is probably an indicator of how you're really doing. Often when we say, I'm okay, usually means often we're not. But the realization that we're broken people and that we can rely on God gives a stronger indicator of where we are. Realizing that we have to put our emphasis on a relationship with God. And so this morning, I want to continue our series. We've been looking at all sorts of different things. Last week, we've looked at anxiety. We've looked at prayer. We've looked at conflict. And so I'm excited for this week as we take a look at something that is very prevalent, and probably about now we're getting the idea that this is something happening more and more in our regular everyday lives, which is discouragement and fear. And so while last week we took a look at the choices that we make and the consequences that come with them as we looked at the narrow and the broad gate, this morning we're looking at how we deal with discouragement and what to do when discouragement comes into our lives. And for this, we're actually jumping out of the book of Matthew, where we've been going through chapter 6 and a bit into chapter 7, and we're going Old Testament this morning. So if you've got your Bibles, head to the book of Nehemiah, and we're going to be looking at what's going on in the book of Nehemiah. Now, I'm going to set the context and then we'll read through our passage. We're going to be going through Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 1 through 15. A good chunk, but you will see that they deal with a whole lot of discouragement during this time. So let's kind of set out the context for what's going on here. After King Solomon had died, the country was split into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom had 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom had 2 tribes. Now, the southern kingdom lasted a little longer than the northern kingdom, and the Assyrians conquered Israel. But even though Judah saw all of this happen, they continued to rebel against God. And in 586, I hope you're taking notes because there's going to be a quiz at the end. But in 586 BC, the Babylonian army destroyed Jerusalem and deported God's people to the area that we now know as Iraq. Now, good news is that many of God's prophets predicted that this was going to happen. Over and over and over, they talked to Israel and to Judah and said, if you don't change your ways, then this is going to happen. Daniel understood this truth when he was reading the book of Jeremiah. And if we take a look at Daniel 9, chapter 9, verse 2, it says, I, Daniel, understood from the scriptures, according to the word of the Lord given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last 70 years. And so we understand that where we find ourselves in Nehemiah is after these years are over. That is a very brief background. And what's happened is God has been working even in the midst of trials. And this is what I love about Nehemiah especially, is you've got this story where a Persian king has sent back people to build the walls of Jerusalem. Not a Jewish king, not an Israelite, but God has moved the heart of a Persian king to send people back to start rebuilding. And maybe for us right about now, we're feeling that. We feel we need to get restarted. We need to get rebuilding. We've been sheltered in place for a little bit or a long bit. We've been teaching school during the days out of our houses and spending time with our families in our houses, and we're ready to get out. We're ready to restart and have things go back to normal. If anything from Nehemiah teaches us that sometimes normal doesn't happen as quickly as we want it. In fact, Nehemiah is not part of the first wave of Israelites being sent back. He's not part of the second wave of Israelites being sent back. He's now part of the third wave, again, trying to motivate people for what's going on. And we'll see in our passage why there's a lot of discouragement in Israel when it should be a time of joy and while God is doing a whole bunch of things. So let's take a look at Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 1 through 15, and you can follow along. When Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria, he said, what are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring back the stones to life and from the heaps of rubble and burning that they really are? Now Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What are they building? Even a fox climbing up on a wall would break down the stones of their wall. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders, your builders. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it had reached till it had reached half of its height, for the people worked with all of their heart. And now, when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard about all the repairs that were going on to Jerusalem's walls, and that they had gone ahead and the gaps were being closed, they were angry. They plotted together to come out and fight against Jerusalem, to stir up trouble again. But we prayed to our God, Nehemiah says, and posted a guard every day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people of Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them. We will kill them and put an end to their work. Then the Jews who lived near them and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some people behind the lowest points of the wall at the most exposed places, posted them by families with their swords, their spears, their bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fights for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our own work. This is a grand narrative of 15 verses, and I thought it was good for us to cover those 15 verses. Because in there you've got this roller coaster of emotion that they've been going through of discouragement. They come back and it's time to build, and Nehemiah describes the conversations that are going on. Now, the way I liken what's happening with Sanballat and Tobiah and the others is very much a kind of biblical trash talk that's going on. And they just continue it, and it builds and it builds. First, it's Sanballat talking trash about Israel, and then Tobiah joins in as well, and others join in as well. Oh, what are the Jewish people doing? What are they going to accomplish? Even a fox could breach those walls. But then Nehemiah goes on to say, hey, here's what God's people kept on doing despite the discouragement that's going on. We can think of it all sorts of different ways. Think of it like if you're at an outdoor barbecue, if you will, and there's one person barbecuing. And I don't know what it is, but whenever there's a barbecue or the smell of grilled meat, all of a sudden people start gathering around the barbecue. And all of a sudden everyone is a professional pit boss who's done professional barbecuing. Ooh, are you sure you've turned over those burgers quick enough? Ooh, those hot dogs are looking a little Chicago style, a little burnt for my liking. Or have you done this? Have you tried this seasoning? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And all of a sudden, it's gone from one person who's just doing the barbecuing to a group of 10 people. And that's actually what we see in our passage. What started as one person complaining and making fun of has turned into this large group of people. And so we understand that there are giants that we are going to need to slay as we start to restart. That discouragement will creep into our lives the longer that this shelter in place goes on. But we're ready to get going. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get going. I miss Sundays. I miss gathering together. I miss the human interaction. That doesn't involve me doing grade 2 mathematics or trying to explain grade 2 mathematics and pretend like I haven't forgotten grade 2 mathematics. I'm ready to get restarted. But discouragement comes along the way. And let's take a look at how Nehemiah deals with it. And I want to take a look at first the causes of discouragement, looking at this whole passage. I think the first thing that we can see when it comes to a cause of discouragement is fatigue. One of the new terms that we've probably heard over the last little while is Zoom fatigue. If you've been on Zoom meetings, if you've had any meeting, you've been on Zoom. And there's now a term called Zoom fatigue where you're just tired of being online and talking to people online. Fatigue sets in here at verse 10. It says, "Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, their strength of the laborers is giving out." Simply put, the people were tired. It carries this idea of staggering, of stumbling, being physically drained. It's noticeable that with the fatigue came discouragement. Verse 6 says that the wall was built to half of its height. And what we see in life is many times projects start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. And again, I know I'm relating a lot to what's been going on in our present context with COVID-19, but it's important for us because this is stuff that we're going through right now. Is that just when we think there's a glimmer of hope, all of a sudden an announcement says, oh, we're not able to meet quite yet. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We're inching towards our goal. It's easy to say, as verse 10 says, we cannot rebuild the wall because we've become fatigued. It's easy to become discouraged because our goal of getting back together and being that community that we need to have where we're in person keeps on seeming like it's at a distance. Yet, fatigue leads to discouragement. The second thing is frustration. I'm sure many of us can understand this. Verse 10 continues by saying, there's so much rubble that they cannot even bother rebuilding the wall. They become discouraged and aggravated because of all the obstacles that have come in their way. There was junk everywhere. It was frustrating. They lost sight of what their actual goal was. For us, it's not necessarily just the goal of getting back together. For us, it is the goal of joining God on mission, and that can take place anywhere. And I don't want us to lose sight of that goal. Yes, in our immediate context, we think our goal should be us gathering together in community and experiencing community, not on Zoom, not on Facebook, and not on YouTube or whatever it may be, but in person, to say hello in person. And that may be our immediate context, but the reality is the larger context has always been joining God on mission. And that's where we need to, again, refocus. I don't know what the rubble is in your life that may be right now a form of discouragement for you. Whether it's just the inability to get out and enjoy the season that it is right now, with the weather being great. The inability to communicate with friends in person. But there is a source of frustration, isn't there? The third thing is fear. Here we see that the enemies of the Jewish people and of the Lord had struck fear in the heart of God's people, despite the promises that God had given. Wherever you turn, they will be there to attack us, was the complaint. Fear in that moment was the catalyst for discouragement for them. Knowing that there were other things at play that would probably slow them down. They hadn't slowed them down, but the talk of it potentially slowing them down is what had caused so much fear and pessimism in the project of building the wall. It's very easy to let fear take over. And if fear, if frustration, if fatigue, if you're feeling that this morning, I can tell you, you're not alone. I think probably everyone watching over the last week, if not the last day, if not the last hour, has felt one of these things as we look forward. But again, the goal has not changed. Think about it this way. Each of the families and groups in Israel have been tasked with a different part of the wall to build. And yes, some had more rubble than others, and some were building. I mean, think about the family fun days of just continually building a wall. But some areas had been built, and some areas had not, and some areas were taking a slower time. Yet there's this larger picture than just your one little section of the wall. It was building the wall of Jerusalem in itself, not just one little section, and building the city. And even more so, building the temple. It's very easy for us to just almost be short-sighted, where here is the call to keep focused on the fact that God is in control, but also our mission. And this is speaking to us today, that our mission is partnering with God on His mission. That was the same as Nehemiah's call. That's why Nehemiah was sent there. So how do we respond to this? It's probably very easy for us to point out the things, fatigue, frustration, fear that can cause discouragement, but how do we change that? What are the cures for this? And I want to touch upon these. In verse 4 and 5, we see that the first one is a very simple one. And we've seen it for anxiety, we've seen it for conflict, we've seen it for all of the different areas of trials in our lives that we've talked about so far, which is simply ask God for help. Nehemiah looked up before starting this all, and he prayed before proceeding with verse 4 and 5, "Hear us, O God." Or in verses 4 and 5 it says, "Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or block out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of your people." This is quite the prayer. Do you get a sense that Nehemiah's a little ticked off right now? We're in chapter 4, and he's discussed all of the things that he's done, and yet he finds himself in a place where he's saying, stop believing the propaganda that's out there and follow God. And he calls on God to do all sorts of things to stop the people, to stop the enemies of Israel. But it's that request, a very earnest request, a heartfelt request. Verse 9 tells us that they prayed to God and posted a guard, and their enemies started talking. Nehemiah continued to pray, and the people stayed on track. Every time Nehemiah prayed and went to God with something, the prayer was answered. The other is, and I believe that this is so true right now, is reorganizing our priorities. I firmly believe that throughout this whole crisis that God has been doing a great reorganizing, allowing us to focus on some of our priorities, our immediate people in our circle, in our neighborhood, in the houses to our left and to our right and across the street of where we are. God is showing us where our priorities are in the neighborhoods where we live and as a church where we serve. In verse 13 it says, "Therefore I stationed some people behind the lowest point of the wall at the most exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows." If the enemies were going to attack, they were going to look for the weakest places. So Nehemiah was prepared in the most vulnerable spots. Here we find the priorities being focused on. What are your priorities this week? What are your priorities when you say, I've got discouragement and it's coming from fear? I've got discouragement and it's coming from fatigue. The amount of times I've had to pray, God, give me energy during this time is immense. And I know all of us are feeling it probably. I went from preparing sermons and preaching on a Sunday and running small missional communities to running a quasi-TV studio. Did they teach that in Bible college? No. And yet, here we are. Yet, the amount of times I prayed for energy, especially on a Tuesday when it's recording day, or a Monday when I'm trying to get my sermon done, and get school going for the kids. God, just give me some energy. I don't even know what to pray except for energy, but I know that God understands the intricacies of what I'm praying for and what I'm dealing with. And so our call this morning is to go to Him with those requests, reorganize our priorities, say, where are my weakest moments and how can I station guards there so that we can become stronger, so that I can become stronger. Notice there was two purposes in reorganizing the priorities: to discourage the enemy and to encourage the people who were dealing with fear. All of a sudden, what was a discouragement to the people had turned around and was a discouragement to those attacking them. And that fear drifted away as they recognized where their priorities are. At the end of the day, we need to remember who God is. One of the terms used here is the sovereign God, which is saying the God of heaven's armies, the commander-in-chief. We can see this over and over. And one thing that I want us to just realize as a church, as individuals, as we hear this, is take a note, if you have a chance this week, in Nehemiah, about how they work together. Even though they're in their different sections, you see that there's this working together and this community being built, even at a distance around the city walls of Jerusalem. Chapter 3 shows this. If you underlined in your Bible, every time you see the following phrases, next to him, next to them, after him, after them, showing people coming alongside others. 28 different times you see this in this chapter alone of people coming alongside others, despite the situation that Nehemiah had just told. Nehemiah was able to build a team. He was able to build a rallying point, but not just for the purpose of the wall, but for the purpose of God. If we want discouragement to disappear, if we want that fatigue, to be able to get through that fatigue, to get through that fear, to get through that frustration, part of it is us being able to function as a team even from a distance. Function as a team even in our own homes. I don't know what this looks like for you, but I'm pretty sure that for all of us, we've experienced something like this over the last little while. And while today, and in that time, it was building the wall with the full goal of building the city and the temple and the kingdom. For us, I don't know what that wall is. I don't know what that rubble is. But don't lose focus on the fact that this is still about building the kingdom. Still with partnering with God on His mission. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this morning. I thank you that we can gather together. I thank you that even at a distance, we're able to see what this looks like to minister as a team. See how we can deal with frustration, deal with fear, to deal with the fatigue that's going on. And we can see the cures that are in there. God, help us see your priorities. Help us realize your priorities and see your plan so we can come alongside you. It's more than just building a wall, God. It's about building your kingdom. And whatever that is in our context this week, I pray that we will look and we will see the kingdom, not just what's right in front of us. You will help us get over whatever we're dealing with right now, whatever discouragement might be there. As we focus on you, reorganize our priorities, and get restarted and get rebuilding. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for what you've done in our lives. And we just pray these things all in your name. Amen. Thanks again for joining us this week. I'm so glad that you were able to come and join us and get to know a bit of the heart of where God is calling us here at Calvary. If you're wanting more information going forward, please again contact us at www.cbcregina.com, and there's a contact card right on our website where you can do that. I also want to invite all of you who are watching and are wanting to get Right Now Media to check your emails. We have sent out an email last week which has an invitation to Right Now Media, which has access to thousands of hours of kids programming, as well as Bible studies from some of the best names around the world. That is all free and it's available to you. So please, if you haven't gotten that invitation, then contact us at the office. If you are wanting to give, you can contact us, or you can give, through online. You can find the link down below. As well, you're able to text CBC Regina to 77977. And finally, you're able to mail it in. And again, the address is below. We want to thank you for giving during this time. And we know that God is doing some great things in our neighborhoods and here at the church as people are hearing the gospel for the very first time. And we want to continue with God on his mission. So thank you for giving. Take care, and we'll see you next week.